I used to be pretty deep into hacking. Not the petty stuff, but the kind that takes you deep into the bowels of the internet, the dark web. It's a place where morality, ethics, and laws don't mean much. But no matter how skilled you think you are, there are some places you should never venture. One of those places is messing with the government. It started as a dare on a Reddit forum. Hack the government if you dare. The post was hidden within layers of encrypted threads, accessible only to those who knew how to find it. At first I thought it was a joke. The whole thing was absurd, right? Only a fool would attempt such a thing. I mean, the government has resources we can't even begin to comprehend. But being young and cocky, I took the bait. The challenge? Break into a low-level government server, find something classified, and post proof anonymously on the forum. The reward was a considerable amount of Bitcoin. Tempting, I know. I thought I could just sneak in, find something small, and then get out without leaving a trace. Easy, right? Wrong. I prepped for days. Proxies, encrypted VPNs, anything to mask my identity. Finally, I was ready. I launched the attack, carefully navigating the web of security, bypassing firewalls, and cracking the system's encryption. It was intense, but within hours, I was in. I was exhilarated. This was the adrenaline rush that only a hacker could understand. Inside the server, it was mundane at first. Standard bureaucratic emails, budget reports, and personnel files. But then, I stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. An encrypted file labeled Project Nightshade. My hands trembled with excitement. I knew I was about to find something big, but I had no idea how big. I cracked the file's encryption, and what I saw inside chilled me to the core. The documents were detailed reports about something called psychological warfare, and experiments that the government had supposedly conducted on its own citizens. People were being monitored, manipulated, and driven to the brink of madness, all under the guise of controlling their minds. There were photos, videos, and audio files of experiments that could only be described as torture. I should have stopped there, but I didn't. I downloaded everything, about 10 gigs of data, and disconnected. The moment I disconnected, my computer shut down. Every single device connected to my network bricked. My phone started buzzing uncontrollably with unknown numbers calling repeatedly. The electricity flickered, and for a second I thought I heard footsteps in the hall outside my apartment. The air felt thick and heavy, like I was being watched. Panicked, I tried to reboot, but my screen filled with lines of code I didn't recognize. Then came a message, blinking in stark red letters. You have been seen. Before I could react, my phone rang again, this time from a blocked number. I hesitated, but then I answered. There was silence for a few moments, and then I heard a voice, cold, monotone, almost mechanical. You shouldn't have looked. Now we're looking at you. My heart pounded. I hung up immediately, but that didn't stop it. The calls came every hour on the hour. The same voice, the same message. Then came the knocks. First soft, like someone politely tapping on my door. Then harder, louder, relentless. Whoever or whatever, it was never said anything, just knocked in a slow, deliberate rhythm. I moved. I changed my phone number, threw away my old devices, and disconnected from the internet completely. But it didn't matter. I could still feel them watching. When I walked down the street, I could see shadowy figures at the corner of my eye, but they disappeared as soon as I turned my head. I started having nightmares, dreams where I was strapped to a chair, unable to move, with people in dark suits standing around me, speaking in a language I couldn't understand. They watched me like I was a lab rat. Weeks passed, and the paranoia was eating me alive. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't function. The knocking continued, sometimes at my door, sometimes at my windows, even though I lived on the third floor. The voice on the phone never stopped either, always with the same chilling message: "We're watching." One night, after days without sleep, I finally broke. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran to my apartment door, threw it open, and screamed into the hallway. No one was there, but as I stood there panting and on the edge of a breakdown, I felt something cold touch the back of my neck. I spun around, but again, nothing. That's when I saw it. My laptop, the one I thought I had destroyed, was sitting in the middle of my living room, open. The screen flickered, and a new message appeared. "Welcome to Nightshade. Your participation is mandatory." I collapsed, the weight of my mistake crashing down on me. They had me. There was no escape. I thought I could outsmart them. I thought I was untouchable, hidden in the shadows of the dark web. But you don't mess with something that far beyond your control. You don't hack the government, especially not on the dark web. Because once they see you, there's no turning back. Now I live in constant fear. They're always watching, and I know sooner or later they'll come for me. I've always been fascinated by the dark web, the hidden layers of the internet far beyond what the average person can access intrigued me. It felt like a digital underworld where anything and everything could be found for a price. But I had no idea how twisted it could get. Not until I stumbled upon something I can never unsee. It all started with a Reddit thread I found buried deep in a forum dedicated to dark web mysteries. Users were sharing links to obscure sites, warning others to stay away. One link in particular caught my eye. The post was titled "The Collector's Room," and the link was prefaced by a chilling note: "Whatever you do, don't stay for long." Of course, I couldn't resist. I had always been curious about these dark corners of the web. I'd browsed illicit marketplaces, seen the illegal stuff being sold, but this felt different, darker. I clicked the link and was immediately taken to a plain black page with a single line of text. "Welcome to the Collector's Room. Proceed at your own risk." A single enter button appeared below it. I hesitated, but then my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it. The screen flickered, and I was taken to what looked like a live video feed. The camera was panning slowly around a dimly lit room. At first glance, it looked like a typical basement, filled with old furniture and shelves cluttered with oddities. But as the camera moved, I noticed something strange. Each object on the shelves was encased in glass, like a display. There were old photographs, handwritten letters, and body parts. That's when I realized what this place was: a digital showcase for someone's macabre collection. The camera zoomed in on a jar containing what appeared to be a human eye, floating in some kind of liquid. My stomach churned, but I couldn't look away. Suddenly, a chat box popped up on the side of the screen. "Welcome, viewer number 43. I stared at the message, my hands shaking. Before I could process what was happening, another message appeared. "Would you like to make a contribution to the collection?" I hovered over the exit button, but something compelled me to stay. I typed a hesitant reply. "No, just looking." The chat went silent for a few moments, and then a new message appeared. "Everyone contributes eventually." Chills ran down my spine. I moved the cursor to exit, but the button was gone. The page wouldn't close. No matter what I did, I was stuck. The camera feed changed. It zoomed in on a small, rusty door at the far end of the room. Slowly, it creaked open, revealing a dark passageway leading into what looked like an endless tunnel. The chat box lit up again. "Come inside." I shook my head, even though I knew no one could see me. My heart pounded as I tried to shut down my computer, but nothing was working. The camera began to move down the hallway, its movements slow and deliberate, as though whatever was behind it wanted me to see everything. As the camera moved deeper into the tunnel, the walls began to change. They were lined with old photographs, each one showing different people, all staring blankly at the camera. Their expressions were empty, hollow. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And then the realization hit me. These were the people who had watched before me. These were the people who had contributed to the collection. The camera stopped abruptly in front of another door, this one even older and more decrepit. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes were glued to the screen. The chat box blinked again. "Open it." I didn't want to. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to stop, to get out, to unplug everything and run. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "No." There was a long pause, and then the reply came. "Too late." The door creaked open slowly, revealing a room that made my blood run cold. The walls were lined with shelves, each one displaying items similar to the ones from earlier, but now they were far more grotesque. There were jars filled with severed hands, fingers, and teeth. Skulls lined the top shelf, each one marked with a name. I recognized one of the names. It was from someone on the Reddit thread who had disappeared months ago. I felt sick. And then the camera panned to a large, empty glass case in the center of the room. It was pristine, waiting for something or someone. The chat box flickered one last time. "Your space is ready." My heart dropped. I jumped up, frantically trying to turn off my computer, but the screen remained on. The feed zoomed in on the empty case, as though it was waiting for me. Then the screen went black, and the last message appeared. "We're coming to collect." My computer finally shut down, but the damage was done. I unplugged everything, threw my laptop into the closet, and swore off the dark web forever. But the nightmares haven't stopped. Every night I dream of that room. I see the shelves, the jars, the skulls, and I know, deep down, that they're coming for me. It's only a matter of time before I become part of the collection. I thought I had seen everything the deep web had to offer. I had browsed forums where drugs, weapons, and stolen identities were sold like candy. I had stumbled across strange, cryptic sites filled with bizarre conspiracy theories and cult-like propaganda. But nothing prepared me for what I found one night, something so horrifying that it still haunts me to this day. It was late and I was bored, sifting through dark websites like a mindless routine. That's when I came across a forum thread titled "Red Room Broadcast. Live tonight, limited access." I had heard rumors of Red Rooms before. Supposedly, they were live streams where people could pay to watch unimaginable acts of violence, often involving torture or worse. But I always thought they were just an urban legend, a twisted story to scare people away from the dark web. No one could really stream that kind of thing live, right? There would be consequences. Yet here it was, a direct link to a red room, and the thread was flooded with excited comments, all from anonymous users eagerly awaiting the broadcast. Against my better judgment, curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked on the link. The screen was black at first, with nothing but a countdown timer displayed. There were exactly 5 minutes until the broadcast started. Below the timer, a message read, "All viewers must remain for the entire show. No exceptions." I shook my head in disbelief, convinced it was some kind of hoax. But I stayed, thinking that maybe it was some elaborate prank or a poorly staged performance. The countdown hit 0, and the screen flickered. The feed came to life, showing a dimly lit room, sterile like a hospital operating theater. In the center of the room was a chair, bolted to the ground. Straps were hanging from its arms and legs, ready to restrain someone. The walls were painted white, but they were splattered with dark stains, blood by the look of it. I should have left right then and there, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something about the scene had me frozen. The camera was fixed in place, giving a perfect view of the room, but no one was there yet. Then, a door opened, and 2 men in masks entered. Between them, they dragged a man who was thrashing and screaming, his wrists and ankles bound in thick chains. They forced him into the chair and secured the restraints, tightening them until he couldn't move. His face was covered in sweat and blood, and his mouth was gagged with a filthy cloth. His eyes were wide, filled with terror. I could hear his muffled screams, his desperate attempts to beg for mercy. The chat next to the video feed exploded with comments, people bidding on what should be done to him. It was surreal, like a twisted auction. Cut off a finger or break his legs. I felt sick reading the comments, but I couldn't look away. The horror was magnetic, pulling me deeper into the abyss. Suddenly, the men in masks stopped and looked directly at the camera. One of them held up a hand, signaling for silence. The chat stopped. The other man pulled out a knife from his coat, a long, serrated blade that gleamed under the cold lights. Slowly, he approached the man in the chair. I wanted to turn off the computer, to look away, but it was as if I was paralyzed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling, but I couldn't move. Then the masked man lifted the knife, placing it against the victim's throat. The camera zoomed in, showing every detail. The quivering flesh, the man's eyes darting around in panic. But just as the blade pressed into his skin, the feed suddenly cut to static. I blinked, startled. The screen was filled with nothing but grainy noise for several seconds. Relief washed over me, thinking the show had ended until the chat box blinked. Viewer number 115, you have been selected. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the message, not understanding. Selected for what? I didn't type anything, didn't respond. But then another message appeared. We are coming for you. I immediately tried to exit the site, but the browser was frozen. Every time I clicked the close button, another message popped up. Do not leave. Panic set in. I ripped the power cord out of my computer, forcing it to shut down. For a moment, I sat there in the darkness of my room, breathing heavily, my heart pounding in my chest. I told myself it was just some sick joke. They were messing with me. It was all part of the experience to scare the viewers. That's what I wanted to believe anyway. But that's when I heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps outside my apartment door. Slow, deliberate. Someone was out there. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but before I could hit send, the power in my apartment went out. I sat in the darkness, the only light coming from my phone screen. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Whoever was outside wasn't trying to hide. They wanted me to hear them. I rushed to the door, deadbolting it and shoving a chair under the handle. I held my breath, listening. The footsteps stopped directly in front of my door. Then came the knock, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. I didn't respond. My heart was racing, my mind screaming at me to run, but where would I go? I waited, staring at the door, praying that whoever, or whatever, was out there would leave. After what felt like hours, the knocking stopped. The silence was deafening. I stayed awake all night, clutching my phone, waiting for the sun to rise. When morning finally came, I gathered the courage to open the door. No one was there. But taped to the door was a note, written in jagged, uneven handwriting. It read, "We see you." I moved out of that apartment the same day, destroyed my computer, and haven't gone near the dark web since. But the feeling of being watched hasn't left me. Every night I hear the same slow, deliberate footsteps outside my door, followed by the knock. I don't open it. I know they're still out there, waiting, watching, and sooner or later they'll come inside. It all started with a stupid bet. My friends and I, all amateur hackers, were hanging out on a forum on the deep web. We spent most of our time messing with small targets, corporate websites, low-level databases, that kind of thing. But that night, someone threw out a challenge that changed everything. Bet you can't hack a government system. I'll pay 5 Bitcoin to whoever does. We all laughed it off at first. Hacking the government? That was suicide. But as the hours passed and the thread filled up with taunts and bravado, I started to wonder if I could pull it off. I wasn't planning to do anything major, just poke around, maybe find some unprotected files and get out. So, I did it. I spent a week preparing, routing through VPNs, Tor, anything to cover my tracks. I chose a low-level government system, something innocuous that no one would care about, a public health database. My goal was simple: get in, grab something, and get out before anyone noticed. I'd leave no trace, or so I thought. Breaking in wasn't the hard part. After bypassing some outdated security protocols, I found myself staring at rows of unremarkable files, mostly health statistics, disease outbreaks, and other public health data. But then, something caught my eye. A folder that didn't belong. It was named Black Box. My heart raced. This wasn't on the system's surface. It looked encrypted, heavily so, but curiosity got the better of me. This wasn't what I had come for, but I couldn't help myself. After all, if I could crack something labeled Black Box, I'd be able to claim the bet and be a legend on the forum. It took hours to decrypt, but eventually I was in. What I found wasn't what I expected. It wasn't medical data or government reports. It was a series of video files. The first one was titled initiation_001.mp4. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. Something about this felt wrong. But then, like an idiot, I clicked play. The video was grainy, the kind of footage you'd expect from an old security camera. It showed a group of people sitting in a dimly lit room, shackled to chairs. Their faces were blank, their eyes staring straight ahead. In the background, a voice droned on, emotionless, talking about something called the program. I couldn't make out all the details, but it was enough to know that these people weren't there by choice. The next video was worse. It showed the same room, but now the people were being subjected to experiments. Intense psychological manipulation. One man screamed as images flashed on a screen in front of him, rapid and disorienting. Another person sat perfectly still, but their eyes were wide with terror, as though they were watching something no one else could see. I felt sick, but I couldn't stop watching. The videos got more disturbing, showing different phases of the program. It wasn't just psychological torture. There were physical experiments too, people being injected with unknown substances, their bodies reacting violently. The final video, labeled Termination, showed a room full of bodies, lifeless and discarded like trash. I immediately tried to close the folder to shut everything down, but it was too late. My computer froze, and a new message appeared on the screen. You have been identified. Stay where you are. My stomach dropped. This couldn't be real. Government systems weren't supposed to respond this way. I frantically tried to disconnect from the deep web, pulling every plug, shutting down every device, but nothing worked. My screen went black. Then came a knock at my door. I lived alone, and it was nearly 3 a.m. No one should have been outside, especially not at that hour. The knock came again, harder this time. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I tiptoed to the door, peering through the peephole. 2 men in black suits stood there, their faces blank, unreadable. One of them looked directly at the peephole, his cold eyes meeting mine. My heart stopped. They knew I was there. I backed away from the door, trying to think. What should I do? Call the police? But who were these men? Why were they here so quickly? I hadn't even done anything major. I hacked a health database, for God's sake. The knocking stopped, but then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of my lock clicking open. They were picking the lock. In a panic, I ran to the back of the apartment, trying to find a way out. The fire escape. I bolted toward the window, pulling it open as fast as I could, but just as I swung my leg over the edge, I heard the door open behind me. Footsteps, calm, measured, echoed through my apartment. I didn't wait. I scrambled down the fire escape, adrenaline propelling me faster than I'd ever moved before. By the time I reached the alley below, I didn't look back. I just ran. I spent the next few nights moving from place to place, terrified that they were still following me. I smashed my phone, ditched my laptop, and cut off contact with anyone who knew me. I went completely off the grid. But I know it's only a matter of time before they find me. The last message I saw on my screen before I ran keeps replaying in my head over and over. The program always finds its participants. I never should have hacked that system. The bet wasn't worth it. Nothing was worth this. If you're reading this, take my advice. Stay away from the deep web. Never mess with the government. Once they see you, there's no going back. And if you ever see a folder labeled black box, don't open it. You won't like what you find.